Guess we could go in the order that Lisa introduced us here. So hi, everybody. As Lisa mentioned, I'm Mark Turek. I am the manager of university relations at the Hartford. I'm a 2004 graduate of UConn, College of Liberal Arts and Sciences with a degree in economics. So needless to say, I love getting back to my alma mater to provide opportunities, and never thought as a student there that I'd be back on campus as a full grown adult hiring people. So that's really cool. Um, my team manages several campus relationships across the country, as well as all of the early career hiring, from both an intern and a full-time perspective. I know we're going to get to some of those nuances a little bit later in the discussion here, but it's pretty much any skill set, any type of job within the P&C side of the insurance industry. Intern full-time in programming for freshmen, sophomores. Lisa had mentioned some of the work that we're doing with UConn Hartford. Some of you guys may be aware of our Hartford Scholars Program that has the backing of our president, Doug Elliott, which is a $1 million scholarship program for underserved students attending UConn Hartford from the city of Hartford. So excited to share insights with you guys, talk a little bit about the brainchild that Lisa mentioned before, and I'm looking forward to a good discussion here today. So thanks for having me.
All right. Hi, I'm Jamie Roshka from the Travelers. We are also a P&C or property casualty insurance company. We specialize in business insurance, personal insurance, as well as bond and specialty, which gets into some of the niche areas of insurance that you probably have never heard of, but are actually very fascinating. On my team, I am a manager in university relations. Much like Mark, we also have leadership and development programs that we are consistently recruiting for, as well as internships that correlate with those programs and opportunities in our field offices in underwriting and claim. So our team really is responsible for all of the hiring for those entry level and internship roles. We also manage the internship experience. So any interns that come into Travelers for the summer, we put on different events and activities for them, orientation, things like that. As of right now, nationwide, we are expected to have 440 interns at Travelers, which is pretty amazing. And a lot of recruiting effort goes into that. So we'll definitely talk more about the opportunities. We also have a strong partnership with UConn. We are Our Chief Administrative Officer, Andy Bissett, is a UConn alum, and he also sits on the board for UConn and is very active. We have a huge sports partnership as well, so I'm sure you've seen our logo at various games, which is really exciting. So looking forward to the conversation as well.
Thank you both. So similar to Mark and Jamie, I work on the early career university recruiting team, and part of our team is also early career diversity. So that is part of our whole space. I've been with Cigna just hitting 15 years in April. I've spent the majority of my career in early career recruitment, and my team supports all of our leadership and development programs. There's about 12 of them. We plan, like Jamie has at Travelers and Mark has at the Hartford. We have an enterprise internship experience. We plan it, recruit all the interns. We work with our leadership and development programs and lead all the hiring. So we're all aligned as recruiters to the different development programs. So it's led from HR, talent acquisition, the recruitment aspect. We think the Cigna and UConn's one of the, so I'd say what our enterprise school, if you want to say, just looking at the numbers and ROI of people that we hire. So I like to say Connecticut is my second home. So I'm originally from Pennsylvania, but I did not graduate from my undergrad from UConn, but pretty soon I will have my graduate degree from here. So I will officially be a Husky. I'm excited. The one thing I think about my space and our company is that we're a health services organization. So when I meet a student on campus and first of all, they can't pronounce Cigna, they might say Spigma. I talk to them about, they're like, what are you talking about? So do you have health insurance through your parents or through the school? And sometimes I've asked them, do you have a health insurance card with you? And they'll go in their wallet and they'll see Cigna's logo and the aha moment goes off. So it is definitely medical benefits, but at the same time, we do offer behavioral health services, and just on college campuses with people in general out, all over the globe. Mental health is pretty big right now at Cigna, really making a lot of different efforts on how we can provide better services to the people that we serve. And then a couple of years ago, we bought a company called Express Scripts. So one of the other piece of our business is the pharmaceutical pharmacy business is brought in with us. So Cigna went from a company of about 35,000 employees to now about 70,000 globally. Corporate headquarters are in Connecticut. So
I have a question for you, Allison. So we heard
Sure.
Jamie's staggering number of 440 interns, which is like, that gives me anxiety a little bit. We have about 155 coming in this year.
Yep.
How many do you have?
Typically we have around 300.
So we have almost 1,000 interns between the three of us that we're bringing in to our
Yes.
companies, which is,
Can't believe that.
I think, insane for the people on the call to hear, right?
Yeah. And Mark, that's a great point. So every summer we like to put together like, hey, interns, this is where you all come from. And UConn is always one of the top schools where we see our talent coming from. So thank you.
Same for us. Yeah.
Staff and professors, and really sharing our opportunities, but really, teaching students, and we're able to hire them. It's great.
That's great. Thank you all for sharing that great information. All right, so let's just jump right in. What roles exist in the insurance industry that isn't always so obvious when the general public thinks of an insurance company? So let's hear about those roles from each of your organizations.
So I'll start. I think the greatest misperception that we encounter with students is automatically, well, I don't want to do sales. Well, if you're working at Travelers, and I think Mark and Allison can probably attest to this as well, you're most likely not going to be in sales. We have a very small sales organization, and a lot of it is, inside sales. A lot of the way that we market our insurance opportunities are through independent agents. So it's not a sales force, if you will. But we really have every type of role that you can imagine. Technology, finance, obviously actuarial is specialized to the insurance industry, but we also are one of the largest law firms in the country because we have so many lawyers on staff to deal with litigation in terms of claims and things like that. We really look for students with a variety of backgrounds, especially in our organizations like Claim, where it's less about what you're studying in school and more about your personality and your customer service skills. How can you, do you have the empathy to work with our customers who, it could be anything from a fender bender to, their house just burnt down and they need someone to be able to talk to them and help them through that kind of situation. We also have a special team that goes out whenever we have catastrophes. So tornadoes, hurricanes, they're on the ground ahead of these events as much as possible, but they spend a month in the field and they pull up in RVs, which are workstations, and we're paying out claims on site as quickly as we can to help people become whole again. So really, we're heavy on like the data analytics right now. That's a really hot up and coming area that I think we're going to continue to look for students for. Our technology space has really kind of transformed into more of software engineering. We like data engineers. We have a whole risk control area. So we look for students that are interested in forensics, in digital forensics, in construction. It really runs the gamut in terms of backgrounds, and there is an opportunity really for everyone, which I think is really exciting. And when you peel back the layers, insurance is not boring. It's fascinating, as I mentioned, especially when you think about some of, we start to talk to students and we're like, hey, did you know that we offer, kidnap and ransom insurance? And they're like, what? And so, it's obviously a very small, limited area. A lot of it goes through Lloyd's of London, but some of these like high level CEOs that might travel to South America where there might be, a chance that they could get kidnapped and have a ransom, there's insurance for that, which is wild, but interesting, I think. So I think it's just it's allowing students to have that open mind to think about where can I use my talents, where can I use my skill set, and not just, pushing or brushing insurance aside. Because I can guarantee that all of us did not go to college and say, I'm going to go work in insurance. Just doesn't happen. But we landed here, and I think, it's been a great experience. Like Allison, I just celebrated my 15 years at Travelers. So it's a thriving industry. We're always going to need insurance, so we're always going to be around. And it's just finding the right fit based on the students' interests.
If I can just jump in and comment on Jamie's comments. So the catastrophe example that with the RVs, those are empathetic students, right? You want students who want to work with people to put their lives back together after a disaster. The other thing you mentioned, analytics and analytics to what you didn't mention, that maybe Mark can get into a little bit is, or maybe not to put you on the spot, but analytics, somebody who doesn't want to be out empathetic and helping people put their lives together might be by internal. They will look at claims, right? So they'll look at fire damage, et cetera. So there's a whole training academy that the insurance companies have that teach you how to look at and assess damage to cars and damages to houses and those kinds of things. So they could be very analytical. And then the other thing that Jamie really stumped me 7 or 8 years ago on was geospatial. So the geography majors and GIS, that we don't generally think of that for insurance. So literally every major can fit into some aspect of the insurance industry. And I think we lose sight of that. But I don't want to step on what Mark and Allison want to say, but just want to follow up on that.
I mean, there's a lot that Jamie went through that is, I mean, the Hartford and Travelers are pretty much like carbon copy companies of each other. Let's be real here. We're direct competitors. We offer the same stuff. I think we target the same types of students, right? And what I always found to be pretty cool about our industry as a graduate of College of Liberal Arts and Sciences is the difficulty of flipping a liberal arts degree into a corporate career in something that is deemed pretty darn specialized when you start peeling back the layers of what goes on in an insurance company. But when we think about some of the roles that Jamie mentioned that would get into like underwriting, we think about construction bond, ocean marine and ocean cargo insurance, kidnap and ransom, executive liability, management liability, even more kind of broad-based things like commercial insurance and employee benefits like disability and things like that. This is where we can pull all those economics majors, the math majors, and things of that nature, where you have a pocket of student who often feels like they're getting left out. I know that's how I felt when I was graduating from UConn, where I'm like, all my friends are accounting majors, they're going to work for the Big Four. What the heck am I going to do with an economics degree? And had I known underwriting as a path back then, I might have been an underwriter today, knowing what those guys make. Certainly more than what I get in this role, that's for sure. So you have that aspect to it. But then when you flip to the other side of it, of some of the more specialized majors like a computer science or something like that. So to your point, Lisa, when we get into the data and analytics, there still has to be some element of empathy to what those individuals are able to see in the data that they're looking at. So when we get into some of this advanced stuff in data engineering and data science and machine learning and predictive and prescriptive analytics and performance analytics, a lot of this it has the customer at the center of what we're analyzing. So like, I'll give you guys a perfect example here. Workers' compensation is something that both us and Travelers do. And workplace injury is a huge source of fraud. Workplace injury is also a massively large source of opioid addiction as a result of the care, pain management and care that they need to get recovery. And so something like in this example, the Hartford developed something called the bodily injury avatar, which is able to utilize unstructured and structured data to feed a model that's pulling legal information, medical records, injury reports, physical therapy, all these different things together to determine if intervention needs to happen. Are we fixing one problem and creating another downstream? So you have this ability. I say this because it's extremely innovative in my opinion, especially when you think about it from the unstructured data side, where like they can mine this conversation that I'm having with you right now, for example. It's pockets of work within this industry that it goes back to when you think about some of these technical students, they have Silicon Valley in mind in a lot of startups and some of these companies that don't have a long tail history behind them like we do, that you're in our case a 212-year-old company that in pockets that I'm giving as examples right now are functioning almost like a startup. They're using the most modern of technologies. They are using innovation and overlaying some of the elements to that into what we're offering our customers. So, it goes even more beyond like there's a home for any major here. There's a home for creativity. There's a home for innovation, bringing ideas to the table, fresh thoughts, experiences, and things of that nature that work into pretty much every single role that we have here. I mean, we even have data scientists that sit with our underwriters. I'm sure you guys have that at Travelers and Cigna too, with all the modeling that's going on in this space. So it's every day you learn something new. Every day you have another aha moment. In the amount of growth that you can experience that goes along with that, where things start to kind of fold into each other. And what you do today is vastly different than what you're in 5 years from now, is staggering. We had a thing that we got recognized for a number of years ago for one of our leadership development programs in technology. And one of the data points that really resonated with me out of this, that I think should resonate with all of you guys on the educator side of the spectrum, is that students that we hire today that go through a 3-year program and place out of that program, there is a very high probability in many of those cases that the role that they place into didn't exist in its current iteration when they started at the company. So that's how quickly things are turning on a dime, changing, innovating, which is kind of birthing new roles and new opportunities for these students to come in at the front edge of it and be the subject matter expert and be the person that could have that 10, 15-year career. And suddenly they're an AVP, 8 years from now. So a lot of really good stuff. I mean, if you're a Connecticut person and you don't work in the insurance industry or aerospace, I guess I would question what the heck are you doing? But yeah, I'll keep rambling here. So I'll stop myself and let Allison have some shine here.
I feel like both of you said it's just like the health side of it is Cigna. Their innovation is number one. We both touched on this too. So empathy, but I take it a step further. Can you have a customer focused interest? Because we're customer driven organizations where we want to support and drive the best results and actions for our customers. So that's, I think, a big piece of our organization, especially. There are so many different opportunities. Like both of you said, we're both, things have changed, like Mark shared. So our tech program has kind of shifted gears on what they're looking for. Because of the need for the data and analytics space, we're really, developing potentially a data and analytics type of leadership rotational program or something. So there's things changing all the time. The one thing I agree, when you go to meet a student on campus, sometimes they're a little bit, oh, insurance. And I look at them like, I thought the same thing. Like when I moved to Hartford, Connecticut, the only thing I did not do is apply to an insurance company because I thought, ew, gross. But I sat in an information session when I worked at another college and I heard the Travelers speaking and I'm like, oh my gosh, you can do all that in an insurance company. So to know when I talk to a student now, it's more of a career conversation because there's so many things to do at our companies. I mean, seriously, from the basic things that you hear about actuarial risk management, like underwriting, finance, accounting, We have a marketing leadership rotational program. Our communications team has seen the need for early career talent to come in. And so we're hiring people that are going to school for communications to work at a company in a leadership program now. That's awesome. You know, data and analytics and digital tech, like all these different things you could do at our organization. So I think changing that mindset, and I hope students are seeing that, especially if you look at some of the alumni that are in our organizations. Ask them to check out their alumni network, whether it's through, you know, the resources you all have using LinkedIn. Huskies that graduate aren't, you know, if they're working in insurance, and they're doing a lot of awesome things. And innovation, I always think, I actually was able to go to the Grace Hopper conference a couple of years ago, and our IT early career program built a, oh my gosh, it was a virtual reality booth for relaxation, and companies that have Cigna benefits started buying these to put in their work sites. And we had a line from companies that you see in Silicon Valley waiting to sit in our booth. And for me to see the name badges and where they came from, it made me feel good about Cigna, because I thought about who created these things. Our early career talent, it was somebody's idea from our summer interns thought of this idea, and it developed into this little booth, and it was amazing. And I remember looking at Facebook and any company, Microsoft, were like, you want to come to see us in this relaxation pod? We're doing something right. And even these women that worked for Cisco and were working at home, they said, we have this at our work, but we work from home, and we read about it, and now we get to use it here. So again, all of that, those innovative things you could, you know, do at our organizations. So great question. We have a lot to say, obviously.
No, that's great. Thank you all for painting that picture. That was really helpful. I think we tapped a little about attributes and skills and competencies, but let's talk a little more about that. As some of us may know, the NACE, the National Association for Colleges and Employers, has come out with career competencies, where employers say that there are 8 career competencies that they look for in applicants. Now, I know you 3 look at a lot of resumes and talk to a lot of applicants. So can we talk a little more about what specific skill sets or competencies, and I'll go over the NACE competencies. There's career and self-development, communication, critical thinking, equity and inclusion, leadership, professionalism, teamwork, and technology. So specific skill sets, competencies that you look for in an applicant, and how do you determine some of these competencies in an interview? And even following hiring, how do you measure and cultivate those competencies in the workplace?
So I'll start real quick, because one thing that we did early on, as my leader is actually a big proponent of the NACE competencies, and she made sure that we met with all of our managers and leadership programs. We actually took the NACE competencies. In Cigna, we have our own competencies. It's our common language of how we operate and how our roles and how we manage our associates, everything. So we took our competencies as the NACE competencies, and we made a little bit of a crosswalk. So when we post our jobs, when we're speaking to students on campus, we're really trying to speak the same language. So we're not even using Cigna competencies and our job postings. We're using NACE words that we're hoping the students are really learning about these things on campus. So we're translating those in our job descriptions. So all of those competencies, you can find them in our job descriptions. You can find them when we're interviewing candidates using behavioral interviews. So tell me about a time when, that's just the interview process. And then all of our competencies, again, connected to the work we do during our one-on-ones with our managers. We talk about the competencies where we need to grow and learn individually. If you want to, build and develop in your leadership skills, we talk about that in our competencies too. So competencies in action at Cigna are all the time. So it's what we live and breathe. It's part of our, you want to talk about your learning and development. You're talking about things with one-on-one with your manager. You want to get a new job in a new area of the business. You look at the competency. What are the base competencies? Where are you within those competencies? Where do you need to learn, grow, and develop? So that is part of our organization. And again, I think the NACE competencies, we really took them to make sure that we're making that connection.
I'd basically piggyback that. I mean, I don't think this is certainly rocket science, or there's like a silver bullet here that we can give you guys that is going to be like earth shattering for you. Listen to me with all the metaphors here. But it really comes down to kind of the basics of being a really well-rounded student more than anything, which will pull in everything that Allison was just talking about, right? Because the well-rounded student is not the person with the 4.0 GPA with their face buried in a book 24/7. And they're also not the person with the 2.8 GPA who's overextended, right? It's some happy medium in the middle of that where you want to see relevant field of study or transferable field of study into something. So when we think about some of these areas that all three of us may hire for, like underwriting or claims, unless you offer a risk management insurance program, no one's going to college to become a claim rep or an underwriter. So we have to create that interest out of transferable academic exposure into that line of work. So it pulls in some of the things we were talking about before about the empathy, but it also pulls in academic exposure, coursework, and things of that nature that are going to be relevant, that can be built off of. So it doesn't have to be all business all day. It doesn't have to be laser focused on insurance, but you want relevant coursework, solid GPA, definite involvement in extracurricular activities, taking leadership roles within some of those organizations that they're part of, stepping outside of the norm and working a little bit harder to get some experiences on the resume to build a profile versus just leaning on things that are easy pickings for everybody to take. And then developing your communication skills. I do a lot of tech recruiting, and I can tell you there's probably a lot of students who need some help in developing some of those skills for making social connections with people, right? And I often say, if you're a recruiter for as long as the three of us have been, within the first couple of minutes of being on the phone with someone, sometimes in the first 30 seconds, if this is going to be a good conversation or not. And so I think for me, it always goes back to, of course, the competencies and the things that Allison was talking about. That's going to be relevant for all of us and part of the fabric of how we approach our jobs. But, laying on top of that and taking it just half a step further is that well-roundedness of, academics combined with my social skills and communication skills, my goals, my motivations, and things of that nature. So again, it's not rocket science. We just want good people we would like to work with, right? So the personality, the skill set, the academics, all those things are very important to us.
Yeah, and I'll answer the second part of the question. It's very similar for us too. It is for certain roles, sometimes we put a little bit more emphasis on the personality because they do have to fit, like we were talking about earlier with empathy and things like that. But while students are here, the way that we kind of assess those skills or roles and responsibilities. So from an internship perspective, we do, within the first week, they have a meeting with their manager to go over their goals and objectives for the entire summer. We do a midsummer review of just simply what's going well, what are some things that we want you to improve upon. And then there is a full review at the end of the summer to kind of assess their performance and make a recommendation if we would say, we would want to make them a full-time offer to come back the following summer or maybe a return internship. And that's the same for our full-time employees. We do self-assessment. We have a mid-year, we have an end of the year review. We do an individual development plan so we can assess ourselves and take a look at where do I want to see myself growing? What skill sets do I feel that I'm lacking and things like that. So it is definitely something that is measured as soon as they, become interns and then also on the full-time side. But it really, I think, like Mark said, it is that well-rounded candidate. We want them to have that life experience, but also, have the smarts, right? So for us, it's, GPA isn't always everything. But sometimes, it's that student that maybe they have a 3.0, but they're working 20 hours a week to put themselves through school, or they, are involved in multiple clubs and organizations and they're trying to balance it all. So it's just trying to find that person that has a great work ethic, that has that grit, as we call it, and we see can be a really great fit in our organization.
Great. Thank you for that. So let's talk about opportunities and programs. Allison, you mentioned this, leadership development and rotational programs. What are they? And tell us about yours and what experiences they provide, including the timeline for hiring.
So I want to say one quick thing before we get started. There are leadership and development programs, and not everyone's going to be hired into them, but we hire a lot of different other people outside of programs. So if a student sees an opportunity posted and gone, and they didn't get into a program, but they really connected with Cigna, the Hartford, or the Travelers during their interviews, and they're like, I really want to work there, do not be discouraged by your decline on that one opportunity. Keep applying. There's so many other jobs outside of programs. I wasn't hired into a program. I know many people that were not hired into a program. So even though we have them, we do recruit on campus for them. We have enterprise internships that are within different business functions. Some of our other business areas do recruit students. So be open to that. I always want to say that because I think sometimes students get caught up in this leadership development. That's the only way to go. But the cool thing about our companies, and I've learned this in grad school in the HR, Masters of HR program, is we support development of our employees. Not all companies do. So I appreciate that. And you can get hired into a non-leadership program role and do your own rotations. So know that's possible, students. But Cigna, we offer about 12 different programs, anything from marketing, actuarial, IT, within finance. There are some MBA programs, all different types of rotational programs. There's a rotational program for early career management in our operations program. And we have people working with, excuse me, our medical care professionals and our managed care rotational programs. And these programs are all across the United States. Sometimes you get hired and you get to move across the country, and we pay for it. We give, a little sign-on bonus, you get relocation, you get to move, all these different opportunities across the United States. A lot of these programs also offer a summer internship experience, and exactly what Jamie was talking about. It is an experience in a way you get to learn about the company. You get to have that experience with your manager, understanding what your goals, how you're doing those check-ins and things, so you can learn and develop throughout the summer. Is this a program I'd want to be hired into? Is this a company where I want to work? So different, I could go into all of them, but it's really marketing, accounting, underwriting, technology, all different programs.
I appreciate the call out of LDP not being the only path. I see this especially in some of the tech recruiting that I do, where one of my first questions that I tend to ask candidates is, do you know what you want to do when you graduate with your degree? It's a little easier in some of these areas because their major is so laser focused, and it's kind of like a fork in the road type of question. It's going to determine if you don't really know what you want to do, but you're a technical student or you're a finance student or marketing or math or something like that will go into our product program. Rotational program is the right place for you if you don't know exactly where you want to go, because it gives you the variety, right? Outside of that, I think we've all had these moments between our three companies where there's an appetite for early career hiring, but not an appetite for, as some of my managers like to say, getting someone temporarily that I really like that you're going to steal from me at the end of that rotation. They want their own talent, right? So born out of that comes several other opportunities that are non-rotational in nature and could be centered around development. So skill development, as Allison mentioned, where we're all really good at that. These programs are usually built with that as the core competency, overlaid on top of the particular area that it needs to go into. So like for us, for example, Jamie had mentioned data engineering being big at Travelers. It's the same thing with us. It's like, I can't find enough of them out there. And we just developed a new program that is non-rotational in nature because we have a gap in talent with Snowflake developers and Talon developers, which is a very technical big data system. They're very expensive for us to hire at the experience level. I mean, we're talking north of 150 a year minimum for that type of talent. So we're creating our own. we're going to partner with a vendor and bring them in and give them that skill set. So now you're creating longevity, you're creating a bench strength behind that. And you're giving students a skill set that would be that question of, you mean you need experience to do this role? How am I supposed to get the experience? Well, this is how. So you have that element to it. And you know, I think thinking about it broadly like that, an LDP is not the be all end all, right? There's tons of hiring that we're doing outside of that space that's just as beneficial. One comment that I would make that was burning in my mind as Allison was talking before was the importance of trying to get into an internship program. You know, if you kind of asked us about our conversion rates from intern to full-time, I would imagine we're probably all, I mean, with your guys' numbers compared to mine, it's probably a little bit easier for us to get a really strong percentage. We're not hiring 440 interns, we're only hiring 150, but on average, we're converting about 75% of those interns into full-time jobs on an annual basis. So what that does is it creates a vacuum, right? If I'm a senior and I didn't get an internship, it's now that much more difficult for me to get one of those remaining openings that I have at the Hartford, right? Where I may be hiring 20 people, but 17 of those are converting interns, which leaves me 3 positions to bring back out on campus. And that's a real number from one of my programs from this year. So, you know, for you guys who are working with the students, stressing the importance of getting into an internship program and busting their tail to get in front of any company to get that experience is going to make senior year that much easier to land a full-time job. Won't have to go to any career fairs, no on-campus interviews, none of that stuff. They can enjoy their last year.
Yeah, and we are similar as well. So we have 10 leadership and development programs that vary from, you know, actuarial to technology, underwriting, product management, data science, which is just a graduate level program. So they only take master's and PhD students. To answer the question about timelines for those leadership and development programs, they're super early. So we are recruiting in September. And some of our more competitive programs like actuarial, they were done right at Thanksgiving. So, which is kind of mind blowing because they were only hiring interns and they were done by Thanksgiving. And I think most actuarial students know the competitive nature of the market and are kind of on top of things. Some of our other programs do finish in that fall semester, but they will still be recruiting in the spring semester. This is a very weird year. I think for all of us, the market is exploding with opportunity, and students, I think, are, you know, just being thrown at all of these great, you know, internships or full-time opportunities. So we are still recruiting for some of our groups that normally we would have been done by now, but we're just, because you know, they've taken other offers or we've gotten declinations for other opportunities that we couldn't compete with, we are still recruiting. So what I would say is if your students are interested in the leadership and development program, I would really encourage them to start looking in the fall. If they are looking for just more, you know, like rotations are not for them, they want to kind of just get into that job and, you know, start things off immediately, we really don't hire for those until March or April because we want those May graduates that'll be available, you know, come June. So they don't do that early hiring like we would for the leadership and development programs. So, you know, students, seniors could start looking now for opportunities. I'm sure at all of our companies, I think last year we filled like over 2,000 positions. That was nationwide, but just goes to show you there's a lot of opportunity out there, and there is a place for everyone. So it's just about finding what's the right fit and doing it in the right time frame. So again, those leadership and development programs, the fall time frame is really when they should start kicking that off. And even for those internships as well, we will be recruiting in the fall. And then more of the spring semester, March, April timeframe, they can start to think about those entry level roles that we do that just in time hiring, and they could start, you know, in May, June, once they graduate.
Great, thank you. I want to jump into our chat right now. We have about 15 minutes. So everyone, if you have questions, please feel free to put it in the chat, or you could also come off mute, but I want to address this one. So I am a staff advisor for English majors who often feel they don't fit into most industries. We know this is not true. What can I tell them about opportunities within the insurance industry? Many are even worried about applying or approaching to roles that don't even seem like a straight line.
Well, I can say that other English majors don't have that fear because we're getting those applicants on occasion, right? It's not in volume, of course, but I had just commented on that question in the chat and wanted to throw out a pretty unique role that I'm filling for the first time this year that is kind of eye-opening to me. So I'm sure everyone's heard of the concept of user design and user experience. And, you know, it's big with application development, and like I like to call it the shiny side of what we create. So when all of us as consumers go out there and use the application, is it soft on the eyes? Does it make sense how the things function? So the designers create that side to it, where you get into a lot of concepts like wireframing and some of these really funky terminology things that pop out with that. But the UX writer is the person who basically focuses on all of the words, right? So this could be on a website, this could be in an application, this could be in the structure of how things look, or creating flyers, electronic flyers for something. Like we have a digital brochure, for example, that we can share with students out on campus, which was designed in partnership with our marketing and communications team and a UX writer. So the UX writer is the one that actually designs what it looks like. But they have to be good writers. A lot of creative writers go into that. You know, straight up English majors. And then you do have some schools that teach user design and user experience that have writing as an element to that. But for me, it's the first time I've ever filled a role in that space. And I thought for the first time, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is something that's like busting into really specifically into areas of liberal arts and sciences that most people wouldn't even think existed. I can tell you, I didn't even think it existed until I had the conversation with the manager, and he's like, go find me a creative writing major or an English major for this. We'll teach the rest. So they don't need the technical side to it. They don't need HTML, CSS, all these other things that you would see in design and usability. So there's some unique stuff out there. Then the other obvious things is communications. So our marketing team has, you know, our external and internal communications team. We have our CEO communications team, PR, and that kind of stuff. The opportunities are limited in PR for college students for a collection of reasons, obviously. But when we think about like our leadership development program and some of the other entry-level comms roles, English majors would fit right into that, because a lot of them are centered around writing and you know, positioning things that our customers are going to look like. Or look at, I should say.
Add something for the English major. So you're an English major that is just an English major and does nothing, you're going to probably struggle to get a job. If you're an English major that works, is involved, maybe like doing active, and your resume shows that, there's so many. That's why I think the world is your oyster. It's when you're, you know, if you're an English major and you see no route to anything, I mean, take a look at what you're doing. That's what I would tell the student. Are you actively doing things to give yourself experiences? You can always use your English major and writing skills throughout your career. And I have, and I was an English major with writing concentration. I've always done projects and work, any team I've worked on, using my writing skills, and I've led them for my teams, and I've done other things. So you know, one time I worked in publishing and, you know, working in sales support, all these different things, and now I'm in HR. So anything is possible. I think it's maybe take a step back. Are you actively involved in doing things and working and giving yourself some experiences while you're a student or on campus to help you kind of understand where you want to go and what you want to do.
Great, thank you. And we have another question in the chat. You all made it clear that the industry is a good fit for different personalities and different majors, but are there any personality characteristics that might not fit so well in this industry? Are there certain personalities that are less likely to succeed or find satisfaction in the insurance field?
So what comes to mind immediately is just someone that, how do I say this nicely? Just someone that's too cocky, like just too self-assured. This is, our environment is very collaborative. It's a lot of teamwork. It's a lot of, opportunity to not only work with your coworkers, but we're working with agents in the field. We're working with customers. So you have to, it's not a, I got to stab my coworker in the back so I can, get myself a raise and get myself onto the next level. It's not going to happen. That's not going to fit in our organization. So it is someone, we don't want anyone that is, so self-assured or thinking like, they walk on water. It's just, it's a turn off to us, and it kind of, puts that bad taste in your mouth. I think about, and I'm highly generalizing, but just like those, investment firms in New York City, right? Like those, it's like, there's no work-life balance. It's just like a constant grind, and you have to like try to, do your hardest work to get ahead. And you have to outbeat or outperform your coworkers just to get, recognition. It's not like that. And we're not looking for students that would appeal to them or, would thrive in that kind of environment, because it is very team oriented. You have to be collaborative. That is the word that we use to describe our culture, is collaborative. And you feel that from our CEO all the way down, to the low man on the totem pole. It is truly a work environment where you are constantly working with others. You could be an individual contributor, but you're still going to be part of a team. So it's that self-assured, almost like that cocky attitude. And I hate to say, say it like that, but that really truly is just someone that's not going to fit in our organization.
I think that's a great way to put it, Jamie, because we all work
Yep.
cross matrix partners. Again, going back to the customers that we have to serve. Sometimes you might be on the front line talking to a customer, you might be on a train or somewhere. And I always think of myself as always, even at a career fair representing our company, because whether or not somebody comes to work here someday, they could be a customer, or maybe they're already a customer, right? Maybe they do have, their parents do have that Cigna insurance. So that attitude is probably, that cockiness is not going to fly, or you might not feel as a hire that you're going to fit in. And I think sometimes when I'm talking to a student, they might have had some exposure to those types of organizations. And the one thing we offer, I like to say, is work-life harmony. We do give you, an opportunity to end your day at a reasonable hour. Of course, there's times of the year, right? Busy recruiting season, I might be putting in some extra time. Or, you have times of your job where you have to work a little harder, but we offer that. So having, if you want that grind, you can get it in different pockets, but we offer a work-life harmony and different opportunities. Have those things.
I think from my perspective, you guys both hit the nail on the head. Going a deeper layer on it, there's one pet peeve of mine that pops up in interviews occasionally with students of this type, when you're kind of asking them like what their long-term goals are, and they start bringing up things like, oh, I want to make money on cryptocurrency, or I'm going to be the CEO of a company, or like there couldn't be a larger turnoff for someone like me. I don't want to speak for you two, but like that's like a deal breaker immediately. Like, you got to understand your audience, you got to understand the room, right? And whether that is a in the back of your mind goal when you're interviewing for an underwriting internship or something like that, it probably isn't the right thing to bring up. So like it's like situational awareness almost, where you kind of have the humility and like humble nature of the candidate that we would want to have, to know that, hey, I'm early career, teach me the way, right? Like I'm not coming to you to say I have all the answers right now. I may have some innovations or things to offer, like Allison's point about the virtual reality relaxation booth, which I think is like the coolest thing ever, and I want one. You can develop those skills while you're here, and then you can be cocky about them later when you can celebrate your successes, right? But you've got to carve that path. You got to walk before you can run, right? I guess is where I'm going with this. And I'm kind of right on board with the exact nature that you guys laid out here, and would take it a step further. When we do some of our programming with students, we actually like speak to this with them. When you're with freshmen, you're with sophomores, and we can't hire them as interns, so let's give them some insight on how they should be carrying themselves or putting their best foot forward, getting at some of these involvement areas and stuff like that to try to kind of push against it and prevent it from happening.
Great, thank you all. Are there any other questions that anyone want to ask our panelists? You could put it in the chat or unmute yourself. And if not, I'll continue. We have about 4 minutes left, and I want to do a wrap-up question and give each of you an opportunity to answer. So thank you again for sharing all this great insight and knowledge that you have about the insurance industry. So what final tip or takeaway can our career champions here provide students on insight in the insurance industry who may have never considered or really understood careers in the industry?
I would just say encourage your students to look at the opportunities. Don't be afraid. Don't let their major limit them. Really just take a look at what we have to offer. We currently are trying to we're undergoing like a job description revamp, because I think some of our jobs are not always so clear on what the role is or what exactly we're looking for. But just for them to know, we are right down the street from UConn. So if they're looking to stay in Connecticut, there's 3 opportunities right here, 3 different companies where they can use their talents and really think about, don't lock themselves in to say, oh, well, I'm a sociology major and I shouldn't be looking at insurance. Well, yeah, you can. You can look at underwriting. You can look at claim. There's lots of different roles for all different majors. So just allowing them to have that open mind and really think about, just don't set it aside, consider it and see what's out there for you.
You said my favorite line that I've heard. I am just a psychology major. And it's almost breaks my heart at that senior year, and people seem so and sound so disappointed in the major they chose, and they might have a great GPA. Celebrate yourself, celebrate your success, get involved, and look deep in some of these organizations, because reality is you're spending a lot of time at work. It's going to be pretty much a hybrid world, right, anymore, but you're going to be spending a lot of time online or in person with some people. You're going to get involved and take the time to look a little bit deep into who we are and what we do and what we stand for, because there was a reason that I went to that information session, and I loved hearing what the traveler said, because it did open my eyes to the world of insurance, but I did not personally connect with that side of insurance. I actually looked at all the different websites of the companies, and I connected a little bit more with healthcare. So that's why I'm at Cigna. So just take the time to look. We're all doing great. Our companies, some of us are in the Fortune, whatever, but check us out. And it's not just Connecticut too, right? Y'all have opportunities all over the United States, some of us globally. So keep your eyes open and mind open too.
I think, helping the students understand that there's a seat for every butt in this industry, right? Like we can forge connections, we can create opportunities based off of more than just the major, right? And one thing that's always fascinated me about insurance, when we look at all the different companies that come out on campus, is if we took like a collective history of us travelers in Cigna, you're going to have hundreds of years of experience, centuries. Like our running joke throughout this pandemic was, this is not our first pandemic. We survived Spanish flu and followed that with the Great Depression, and we're still here. Go figure. So like, I think there's an element to the stability behind that, where I'm sure we all 3 of us have colleagues, or the 3 of us have colleagues that have 30, 40 plus years in the companies that we work at, which is just unbelievably fascinating to see. And that, I think, to a student is kind of eye-opening. Like, hold on a second, like you're telling me I can land this job and like 20 years from now I could still be there. I don't have to like continue to look for a new job every 2 years in a new company. I can have that trajectory and growth directly within the company, and I could build new skills and shift to a new role. Like what? So, I think opening their eyes to that about the variety and the reach and the size of the industry, but then overlaying that on top of the immense stability. I don't want to say we're recession proof, but like insurance will always be needed. It's never going away. We may change how we do it. We may innovate. We may get fancier as we get these younger students in our four walls, and they have ideas like relaxation pods. Who knows? But like, I think there's a really neat factor to like being in our case in a company that's 212 years old and could say we insured Abraham Lincoln and Babe Ruth and the construction of the Golden Gate Bridge and stuff like that. Like, it's just a really cool place to be. And in a market like today, stability should go a long way with students with the volatility that we've experienced over the last couple of years. So that's my thought.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mark, Jamie, Allison, for joining us today with our career champions. Your knowledge, your expertise was so helpful, and we will be sure to spread this to our students. And thank you for all that you do for UConn. All right, this wraps up another Insights on Hiring Trends workshop. We'll bring you another one next semester, career champions. And for now, again, thank you, Mark, Jamie, Allison, for being here. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.